Hola, clase. Today is going to be a pretty short lesson. We're getting to the end of the preterite tense, and spelling changers are pretty simple. We're just going to learn 3 verbs that are spelling changers today. You're going to see that they kind of have a similar pattern to the preterite tense stem changers that we already learned about. They're not stem changers, but they kind of follow a similar pattern. So in the upcoming slides here, I'll show you why these verbs are called spelling changers. And what kind of spelling change occurs in them. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here are the 3 spelling changers that we're going to be learning this year. The first one there, leer, which is read. So yesterday I read a book. I find it interesting that in English, read and read, our past and present tense, are spelled the same way. They're just pronunciated differently based on the context. Creer, believed. So I believed the story that he told me last week. We can use that when we believe in something or when we believe someone. And then oír, heard. And that's usually used when we hear a sound or something like that. We use escuchar when we're talking about actually listening to someone talk to us or listening to music or something like that. But those are 3 verbs. These are called I to Y spelling changers or I to Y verbs in the preterite tense. And I'm going to show you how they get that nickname. All right, guys, so I want to spend a little bit of time on this first slide just to make sure that you understand how these I to Y spelling changers work. So we've got the verb leer. We're going to do that on this first slide. I'm going to go ahead and just real quickly write up the other verbs up here. So that you remember what they are, creer and oír. And I really just want you to see what they end in, just so you remember they end in ER, ER, and IR. Okay, and so we need to remember that ER and IR verbs in the preterite tense, regular verbs in the preterite tense, they all take the same endings. What's really nice is you should know these endings for ER and IR verbs really well because we just used all of these endings for our preterite tense stem changers, since those stem changers all end in IR. So let's review those real quick. We've got iste, io, imos, and eran. Okay, now you might already be able to see why these are called I to Y stem changers. And if you are looking at this I right here and this I right here, then you will see what's happening here. When we add these onto the end, we actually change that I to a Y in the LA usted form, and then we change the I to a Y in the ellos, ellas, ustedes form, okay? And that's how they get the name. They don't do that in any of the other forms, the yo form, the tu form, and the nosotros form. We just add on the ending, so we get leí, leíste, and leímos. But in the el, ella, usted form, we get leo, that I changes to a Y. And then in the ellos, ellas, ustedes form, that I changes to Y, and we get leeron. You'll remember that we did this in the preterite tense as well. In the el, ella, usted, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes forms, those were the 2 forms that took a stem change. Well, in this case, these are the 2 forms that take a spelling change. Remember, these are not stem changers, okay? If these were stem changers, something in the LE, the stem of the verb, would change, okay? But nothing in the stem of the verb is changing. What's changing is a vowel in the ending of the verb, okay? The I in the io, that's changing, and then the I in the yeran, that's changing. So that's why they're called spelling changers, because we change the spelling of an I to a Y. There's some sentences here for you. Anteayer yo leí 2 libros. So yesterday I read 2 books. Ayer tú leíste una revista. Yesterday you read a magazine. And mi madre leyó la Biblia. My mother read the Bible. Those are just some examples so you can see how you would use these verbs in a sentence. And here you can see that the verb creer, believed, it has the same pattern of leer. So we're going to take the ER off of the end. We add our regular ending, the I with the accent mark. So we get yo creí. In the tu form, we take off the ER and we add iste. And you will notice that we do put an accent mark over the I there. And we usually don't do that, okay? So try to remember that. I'm not going to count you off if you forget that, but it is important to put that there. So tú creíste. In the él, ella, usted form, we would usually add the IO ending. So remember, we're changing that I to a Y. We end up with creyó. And then in the nosotros form, we just take off the ending and we add imos. So we get creímos. And then in the ellos, ellas, ustedes form, we should be adding hieron, I-E-R-O-N, but instead we get rid of that I, we change it to a Y, and then add the rest of the ending. So we get creyeron. Some sentences here, no creímos la historia de mi padre. So we don't believe, or I should say we didn't believe, because it happened in the past tense. So we didn't believe the story of my father. Creí que Papa Noel existía de verdad. So I believed that Santa Claus really existed. And then the last example here, ellos creyeron que no fue un accidente. They believed that it was not an accident. And then just another reminder here, remember that this spelling change only occurs in the él, ella, usted form and the ellos, ellas, ustedes forms of these verbs. All right, and here we have the last verb and the last slide of this video. So the verb oír, and you will see here, just like the other verbs, it follows the exact same pattern. It only changes the I to a Y, to the Y in the él, ella, usted form. In the ellos, ellas, ustedes forms, it leaves the other forms alone. So for oír, we drop the IR. We end up with oí, oíste, oyó, oímos, and oyeron. And again, you will see that the I changes to a Y in the él, ella, usted form, and the I changes to a Y in the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. Some sentences here for you. No oíste las noticias. So you didn't hear the news. Ellos no oyeron nada. So they didn't hear anything. And then Marta oyó un grito. So Martha heard a scream. All right, that's all I have for you. We will practice this in class. Adios.